everyone, Emily here from Emily Reads, and today I am going to be bringing to you my January wrap up. So, normally I don't film during the week, I normally do it on Saturdays, but we have a snow day. I'm here in central Illinois and watching the snow come down, and we're supposed to get 12 to 16 inches of snow. So, I'm not going anywhere, so I thought it would be a great time to do my January wrap up. So, I read 6 books for a total of 2,764 pages. And I'm going to just say right now from the start, please, I'm going to apologize. I'm going to be bending over. My books are on the floor, so you're going to have some extreme close-ups, so I apologize. So, the first book that I read is The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. And I used this for the Flourish and Blots challenge of the prompt was herbology, was the subject, and Neville Longbottom, the character who is an underdog. Vin for sure has been an underdog throughout the series. And then the Pop Sugar reading challenge, I use this for Found Family. And I gave this a 4.7 out of 5 stars. And the reason why it was a 4.75 and not a 5 was because I was so hoping for some interactions between two characters that I really loved in The Well of Ascension, and I didn't get that in this book. There was none of that, and so I was so disappointed because that relationship was just so beautiful and so well developed. But I loved watching Vin and Elend and them working to continue to fight the forces of evil in this empire. I enjoyed learning more about Spook and watching him be developed as a character. Some people in watching BookTube, they don't like the ending to this book. I felt like the ending had to happen. So there were a couple of things that happened that I was like, no, I didn't want this to happen, but it made sense with the story, and I realized like it had to happen, and so for that reason I'm okay with it. Also, just a tip, read the epigraphs, or so like the portions that are italics at the beginning of each chapter that give important information both from the past and also for potential future events. So read those epigraphs. What I also loved was how they developed the different magic systems, and you get hints of one of the magic systems in the other 2 books, and that magic system is further developed in this book. Here's what I appreciate about that. So it wasn't really that magic system was not really developed in the other 2 books, but we had hints and we knew that it was there. And so I get so annoyed when some authors, just the Divergent series, I'm going to just throw that out there. The Divergent series to me was ruined by the 3rd book, because the 3rd book had all of this information that there was no hints to in the first 2 books, but were key to the series. There were hints in the other 2 books, and now we see the fruition of everything that Sanderson has developed. So that's what I appreciate about it, is like we see it now fully played out. So that was the first book. The second book that I read, I actually didn't start right away after Hero of Ages, but the book that I started, I put down because mentally I was not there. So what happened was, I'm teaching in the middle of a Omicron surge, and we had to make some changes to our teaching schedules in order to respond to that surge. That was stressful. So I put down the book that I was reading, and I picked up this beautiful book that I got at a used book sale called A Nest for Celeste by Henry Cole. And I used this for the Pop Sugar challenge. You can read it in one setting, and for the Flourish and Blots, I use this for the Transfiguration, the switching spell, the cover jacket, and then the actual book are 2 different colors. So this is a book about Celeste, who lives on a plantation in the South pre-Civil War. And one summer, um, Audubon comes to live at the plantation, and he has an apprentice boy who's learning how to draw. And so he comes to this plantation to be a dance instructor for the daughter of this plantation of the family, and they live there for the summer. In actuality, that really did happen where Audubon did that to raise money for his travels throughout the United States, to paint the birds and wildlife. Um, we learn some of his methods, which are really pretty horrific when you read it. Remember, this is just, it's what they did, it's history. I'm very thankful they don't do that anymore to birds, what he does. But she befriends the apprentice, and it's just her adventures in befriending the wildlife, and sometimes not befriending and having to escape from them. And it's just a beautiful story of friendship and family. There are beautiful pictures throughout the book. And Cole does such a wonderful job drawing Celeste and drawing the fear and the sadness and the love and the joy, and it's just so beautiful. It's a beautiful tale of friendship and also of loss. And there's a quote that I'm going to read. And it says, "She pondered, was it worth the feeling of sadness and melancholy to make a friend and then lose him? Would she rather not have the heartache of losing a friend and not have the memory of friendship? No," she decided, "no." So what I loved about this was, and it was a beautiful way of being able to teach middle school children about grief and loss. Whether that grief or loss is because their friend has moved away, or whether that grief or loss is because that friend had passed away. And this book just resonated with me because I had a good friend of mine pass away this past fall. So this book I gave 5 out of 5 stars. Again, that's A Nest for Celeste by Henry Cole. Apparently there's a second book in this called A Quest for Celeste, so super, super cute. The next book that I read was The Golden Fool by Robin Hobb. And this I gave 5 out of 5 stars. And I used this for the Flourish and Blots. The subject matter was Care of Magical Creatures, and it includes a magical creature. And this book is the second book in the Tawny Man trilogy. So beautiful. So first we get more development of Fitz and his relationship with the Fool and his relationship towards Prince Dutiful. We learn way more about the skill, which is a magic that those from the Farseer family line, and the Farseer family is like the ruling family of this world. So we get more information about the skill, both what it can do and the dangers, both positive and negative. We also learn more about the wit, which is a magic that's tied to like animals. So like people can communicate with animals and get help, and they bond with an animal and they get help from that animal. And also just we learn more about how people feel about the skill and how people negatively feel towards the wit. I really enjoyed it. I love Robin Hobb. She is a master at developing characters and developing relationships within those characters. There is a conversation that happens in this book that is just heart-wrenching. And the conversation, like, you're like, no, don't have this conversation, but at the same time I understand why you're having this conversation. She knows how to rip your heart into shreds and then put the pieces back together. And we love it, and we love her for it, and we keep coming back. So I just say, if you have never read anything by Robin Hobb, start with Assassin's Apprentice. Bear in mind, Assassin's Apprentice Fitz is 6 years old. Start with the Farseer trilogy, read Lightship. You will not be disappointed. She is fantastic. Then the next book I read, I am part of the Napping Bibliophile on Facebook, and they had a book club discussion via Zoom, and they picked Evie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes, and I use this for Pop Sugar. It takes place during a favorite season. It takes place year round, and it takes place during the fall, my favorite season. And for the Flourish and Blotts challenge, the subject I used this for was divination and the Grin, and it contains a death. So Evie Drake, her husband passes away at the beginning of the story, and she has, and then we flash forward a year into the future, and um, I just had a brain fart there. The rest of the action takes place a year after her husband's passing away. And so she has a hard time leaving the house. And everyone in the town thinks that it's because she's grieving her husband, and she just doesn't correct them. In addition, this is a story of Dean, who is a Major League Baseball player, who ends up having to retire because he's a pitcher, and for some reason he just can't throw straight pitches. And he's tried everything. He's tried physical therapy. He's tried hypnotism. He's tried acupuncture. He's tried seeing a psychologist. He's tried it all, and nothing can fix his pitching arm. So he retires, and he decides, like, he needs a break from the New York life. He needs to just kind of um, gain his bearings. And so he ends up renting an apartment from Evie. So it's a story of their relationship. And yes, it's a romance. What I appreciate about it is that it's not insta-love, it's not insta-lust. Linda Holmes takes time to develop their relationship. In addition, Evie has a really sweet relationship and friendship with a platonic relationship with a man named Andy, whose wife had divorced him. And so how they have taken care of each other through their different griefs process of grieving their marriages. It was good. I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Also, just in case you're wondering, there is Evie and Dean do become physically intimate in this book, but we don't get graphic details. So that's another thing that I appreciate about it. Then the next book I read, I started this after finishing up Hero of Ages, and then I had to take a break for a little bit. And that would be The Scold's Bridle by Minette Walters. And I use this for the Pop Sugar reading challenge of the title begins with the last letter of a previous read. So Hero of Ages ends in an S. Scold's Bridle starts with an S. And then for the Harry Potter challenge, I use this for the subject of divination. Unflogging the Future, a mystery or a thriller. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Not because it was a bad thriller. Like, I think Minette Walters is great at what she does. I just have discovered mysteries and thrillers just aren't for me. Unless they're cutesy, like Joanne Fluke, Joanne Carl, like the heavier stuff themed ones, they're not for me because they're not. I'm a teacher. I deal with a lot of heavy stuff. I teach with a lot of students with a lot of trauma, and so like when I'm reading, I need an escape from that, and this was not that. So basically, this is the story of Matilda Gillespie. She's an older woman, and she is discovered in her bathtub with her She's discovered in her bathtub with her wrists slit, barbiturates in her system, and then she's got this Scold's Bridle over her head, and like flowers arranged in the Scold's Bridle. And so then it becomes, well, who killed her? In addition, after reading the will, it's discovered there's some twists that come with reading the will. Now, like I said, it's good if you enjoy a mystery or thriller. I do recommend it for that. It seemed like every single human being in this book, there was something that was just like, ooh, like, ew, like, you're not a nice person, ew, uh, ew. So that's why, moving on. And then the last book that I've read, I read Time's Convert by Deborah Harkness, and I used this for the Flourish and Blots. The subject was charms, and it's a book by a favorite author. Now, I loved Deborah Harkness and her Discovery of Witches trilogy, and this picks up the story of Phoebe and Marcus. So Phoebe is Marcus's fiance, and she decides that she wants to become a vampire before they get married. So she gets turned into a vampire, and it tells the story of her early vampire days and how she learns to live as a vampire. It also tells the story of Marcus before he became a vampire, pre-American Revolution, then during the American Revolution when he became a vampire, and then also life in Paris and in New Orleans. In addition, it tells the story of Matthew and Diana after the events of the original trilogy. I gave this book 3 stars, and the reason why I gave it 3 stars was I felt like Deborah Harkness did a little too much in this book. If we had gotten a story of Phoebe and her turning into a vampire, that could have been one complete novel. If we had gotten the story of Marcus and his backstory, that could have been one complete novel. I felt like we had all of this there was so much build up for like what happened in New Orleans, and then we get like a chapter of New Orleans, and we get we get a little bit more backstory of what happened in New Orleans, but not a whole lot. And then Matthew and Diana and their life after the events of the original trilogy. That could have been another book. So there was too much going on for anything to be fully developed. So that's why I gave it 3 stars. Like, I still enjoyed it. She did a lot of research. It was interesting to get more information about the American Revolutionary War from just like a different perspective. But like I said, it was just she had her hand in too many pots and too many different storylines for them to be fully realized. So that was my January wrap up. Let me know if you've read any of these books in the comments, what your thoughts were. What was your favorite book read in January? For sure, my favorite book read was The Golden Fool. If you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. If you are getting slammed with snow, stay safe, warm, and dry. Thanks.